The Forbidden Knowledge Accord, Chapter 3. Wind ripped across the endless white. The Argo 9 dropped through layers of cloud like a ghost, engines silent under stealth protocols, its matte back hull absorbing the pale blue glare of the Antarctic sky. No flight plan, no national flag, just coordinates burned into the minds of 5 people determined to finish what millennia had buried. Below, the ice stretched for miles, pure, untouched, hiding secrets older than civilization. Melissa sat in the co-pilot seat, eyes locked on the glacial ridge below them. "That's it," she said quietly. "The signal's strongest there. 5 miles straight down." Jason leaned between the seats watching the readouts. "And the geothermal spikes?" "Still climbing," Lang answered from behind him. "It's responding to something, either the global broadcast or us." The ship touched down with barely a jolt, its landing struts hissing into the crusted snow. The wind howled louder here, as if warning them back. Melissa stepped off first, boots sinking into the powder. She scanned the horizon. Nothing but white, sky, and silence. Yet beneath their feet, seismic sensors pulsed a strange rhythm. Not natural, not tectonic. It was almost musical. Jason unloaded the equipment: portable resonance beacons, excavation drones, oxygen-laced thermal suits, and a sonic drill, one of his own design. It used amplified harmonic vibration to melt and fracture ice without explosives. "We have 12 hours before the next satellite pass," he said. "Let's make them count." The dig began. At just over 100 meters, they hit black ice. Dense, ancient, layered with mineral deposits not found anywhere else on Earth. Jason adjusted the resonance pattern. Deeper still. 200 meters. 3. At 500 meters, the drill stopped. The vibration had changed. Jason dropped into the borehole shaft with a narrow lantern beam. What he saw below stopped his breath. A perfect hexagonal tunnel, melted clean through the ice, with walls made of some crystalline alloy fused directly into the glacier. He called up to the others. "We didn't cut this." Melissa joined him moments later, staring into the tunnel. It stretched downward into darkness, glowing faintly with embedded veins of blue-white light pulsing like a heartbeat. "No human ever built this," she whispered. "Not even the Atlanteans. This predates them." By the time Lang and Parker arrived, the full scan of the tunnel had mapped a spiral descent, descending at a precise, gravitationally balanced angle, leading toward a cavern so massive, the sonar echo took 4 seconds to return. Jason read the readings again. "That's not a chamber. That's a city." They descended slowly, light panels embedded into their suits, casting long shadows on the crystalline walls. Glyphs and etchings, some familiar, some utterly alien, began to appear along the inner spiral. Parker stopped frequently to scan them, his voice trembling. These markings aren't linguistic. They're functional. Code, maybe. Resonant programming." Lang ran her fingers along one etching. "It's alive." At the base of the tunnel, they emerged into a dome, kilometers wide, suspended in the ice like a pocket of eternity. And at the center of that dome, buried into a basalt pedestal ringed with energy veins, stood the generator. It rose over 50 meters high, triangular at its base, spiraling upward like an inverted tree of metal and crystal. At the top, a glowing quartz obelisk rotated slowly in the air, untouched by gravity, humming to a rhythm only the Earth could hear. Jason stepped forward, breath fogging against his helmet visor. "It's still operational." But before anyone could respond, Lang stiffened. "We're not alone." From the far edge of the chamber, shadows moved. Shapes emerged, humanoid but clad in sleek, angular suits with no visible insignias. Helmets mirrored, weapons slung low. A private strike team, armed, silent, watching. The race to awaken the generator had become a confrontation, and whoever they were, they hadn't come to share. Below the surface, the team pressed deeper into the massive crystalline chamber, scanning the spiraling glyphs and the pulse of the generator. Jason remained focused on the energy readings. Melissa and Lang worked in silence, careful not to disturb anything they didn't yet understand. Every sound echoed like memory. Every light seemed to respond to their presence. But above them, on the frozen surface of East Antarctica, a far greater drama had begun to unfold. The wind tore across the ice fields, lashing at tents and sensor towers. Snow swirled in harsh gusts around a perimeter of armored transports, command vehicles, and fortified bunkers manned by over 100 World Council soldiers. They had dug in fast, building a 360-degree defense around the landing site. Inside the tactical operations trailer, General Higgins stood over a digital map pulsing red with new inbound markers. Unidentified aircraft crossing the shelf edge. Multiple targets. 3 formations inbound, a radar officer called out, eyes wide. They're dropping troops. Hundreds of them. How many? Higgins asked, already knowing the answer would be bad. Outnumbered 5-1, sir, and still climbing. Higgins turned to his comms officer. Radio the council. Tell them we need reinforcements immediately. Before the message could be sent, the silence of the frozen field was broken by the low growl of an engine. From the white horizon, a large, unmarked snowcat crept through the swirling flurries, stopping just inside the perimeter. Its doors opened, and 4 men stepped out. Cold, deliberate, and unmistakably military. No insignias, no national flags. "We are taking this site," said the lead man, his tone flat, absolute. General Higgins didn't flinch. Under whose authority? The answer came as a single, unblinking statement. Under mine. The air turned still. "We can do this, with or without bloodshed. The choice is yours." Before Higgins could respond, the sky above them erupted into thunder. Dozens, then hundreds of parachutes unfurled, dotting the pale sky like falling petals. Crates of equipment followed, attached to auto-guided drop platforms. Troops in white and gray Arctic camo landed in practiced formations, rifles drawn, packs secured. Within minutes they had surrounded the World Council camp in a loose but deliberate perimeter. Precision, rehearsed, deadly. Then, from the east, another group stepped forward. 3 men in Eastern European field uniforms, patches clearly visible on their arms. Russia, Poland, Ukraine, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Romania, and Hungary. The lead soldier removed his helmet. Tall, broad-shouldered, and commanding, he addressed the 4 unmarked Americans in a deep, unmistakable Russian accent. "Hello, General Higgins," he said, nodding with grim familiarity. "Tell me, why would 4 high-ranking American military officials be clothed in gear with no insignia? Are you here representing your countries, or not?" None of the 4 men answered. The Russian officer stepped forward. "We are here to help protect this site. We are the Eastern European Alliance. As you can see, we represent our nations. We are backing the World Council." He turned slightly toward the broadcast drone hovering nearby, its red light blinking. "This conversation," he added, "is being streamed live to every major news network, every global forum. If your goal is to start World War III in the Antarctic, please proceed." A silence settled across the field. Snow drifted between the soldiers. "But know this," he finished, his tone ironclad. "Whatever happens here is only the beginning." The 4 American officials spoke briefly into their comms, then turned and walked back to their unmarked snowcat. No orders were issued. No escalation followed. They sat there for several minutes, engines idling, as the world watched and waited. Then, slowly, the snowcat turned away. It disappeared into the white, not from fear, but from pressure. The eyes of billions had seen them. There would be no hiding this confrontation behind official denials. Not anymore. The hostile forces withdrew to a distant ridge 3 miles out, where they set up observation camps. But the line had been drawn. Around the World Council site, soldiers and machinery rained from the sky for hours. Eastern European airships touched down one after another, unloading supply caches, medics, communications arrays, and energy shielding equipment. White tents bearing the Council's crest rose from the snow like a new capital of human cooperation. By the next morning, the site was formally declared to be under exclusive protection of the World Council. Any unapproved approach by air or land would be considered a direct threat to global security. A banner was raised, not of conquest, but of defense. The Eastern European bloc, nations long battered by exploitation, war, and climate collapse, had made their choice. Together, they stood with the World Council, and elsewhere, in high towers and gilded war rooms, the powerful men who once shaped the world in shadow watched with growing fury. They had underestimated the Council, believed it would be just another committee to manipulate. They had been wrong, and now they had lost control. Far below the frozen conflict unfolding on the surface, the team descended deeper into the ancient complex. Whatever skirmish had erupted above, whatever political lines had been drawn and threatened, was distant here. Just a faint buzz over the comms. A muffled confirmation from Melissa's earpiece that the World Council perimeter was holding, bolstered by unexpected allies. Reinforcements were dropping in. For now, that was all she needed to know. Down here, the silence was complete. They stood at the edge of a second chamber, a cavernous void wrapped in soft blue light, the ceiling arched with hexagonal patterns like a frozen honeycomb. The floor sloped downward toward the base of the structure they'd come to find. It wasn't just a generator. It was a pyramid. Unlike anything on the surface, this one was perfectly intact. Black stone with inset crystal veins running vertically to a capstone, suspended above it by magnetic levitation. The pyramid's base was fused directly into the ice-slick floor, its form flawless, untouched by erosion or time. Jason circled the outer perimeter slowly, one hand trailing across the surface. No seams, no joints. This thing was grown, or printed, not built. Melissa stood beside a towering monolith of glyphs to the east side of the structure. Her breath misted the air, eyes tracking the slow pulse of light flowing through the symbols. "It's active," she said, "or awakening." Lang stepped toward a circular dais embedded near the center of the chamber. A low vibration tickled her boots. The floor beneath her pulsed in rhythm, not with machinery, but with something closer to breath. The whole space felt alive, as if it had just noticed them. Parker scanned the glyphs running up the pyramid's base. These symbols, they're not religious. They're not even communicative. They're functional. They're instructions. Jason joined him, setting his palm flat against a glowing panel. The stone was warm. "We're inside the command node," he said. "This isn't just for generating energy. It's balancing the planet." Melissa turned to him. "You mean regulating it?" Jason nodded slowly. "Earthquakes, volcanic activity, atmospheric shifts. It's all influenced by what happens here. This isn't just a power station. It's a stabilizer." Lang walked the inner ring of the structure, passing ancient pillars, resonance channels, and circular steps etched with concentric grooves. It's as if they built this to work with the Earth, not against it. The generator doesn't dominate the planet, it harmonizes with it. Suddenly, Jason's wrist monitor began flashing. "Field density spike," he muttered. "The magnetic field just shifted around us, 15% variance." Lights inside the pyramid brightened. Then, slowly, the capstone above began to rotate. A low harmonic tone filled the space. Not mechanical, not electronic. Musical, deep and resonant, like a choir made of stone and starlight. Dr. Parker's eyes widened. "It's responding to us." Melissa stepped forward. "Or maybe it's responding to the broadcast." Jason quickly cross-referenced the readings on his tablet. Every frequency it's emitting aligns with the core tones embedded in the transmission loop we sent to the world. "The system's listening," Lang whispered. Beneath them, the ice trembled slightly, not in warning, but in resonance. The pyramid had begun sinking with something larger, something planetary. Jason activated the portable holographic interface and began running simulation. "If I can calibrate a resonance lock," he said, "we might be able to bring it into full alignment. Not just a test activation, a stabilization protocol." Melissa moved beside him. "Can we control it?" "No," Jason said, still working, "but we can communicate with it, at least enough to help it finish what it was built to do." Parker stepped toward one of the crystal conduits leading from the pyramid into the ice. "This entire region may be wired into the planetary crust. The ancient builders used the mantle's vibration like a conductor. This is beyond infrastructure. It's symphonic." The lights pulsed again. A second harmonic tone joined the first, deeper and slower, rippling through the chamber and into their bones. Outside, buried in the storm above, the ice moaned. Not in collapse, but in release. Jason stopped typing. That was a pressure bleed. Lang looked up sharply. "You mean—" "The system is venting," Jason said. "It's relieving tectonic stress, on purpose." Melissa stepped back from the pyramid, staring up at the levitating capstone as it continued to spin, its surface etched with a glowing lattice of patterns they had yet to understand. "This machine, this whole place," she said softly, "it was built to keep the planet alive. And now, after thousands of years, it had begun to wake again." The ancient machine pulsed beneath the Antarctic ice, syncing its rhythm with the planet itself. And above it, across the surface of the Earth, the effects began, not from the machine, but from the awakening it had triggered in people. For once in human history, knowledge had not led to war. It had led to clarity. The newly elected President of the United States stood before the cameras that morning and declared a national emergency, but not the kind the world had come to fear. He spoke clearly, firmly. "The world is changing. This moment is not one of collapse but of transition. To preserve our peace, we must not allow chaos to take the wheel. Until further notice, all economic activity, tax schedules, and institutional structures will remain in place. Prices are frozen. Stock values are locked at pre-reveal levels. There will be no panic. There will be no exploitation of this transition." The message resonated, and not just in the U.S. Across Europe, South America, Africa, and even inside normally restricted information zones like North Korea and China, the same realization was dawning in every leadership chamber, every quiet home. The world had changed, but it didn't have to fall apart. In an unprecedented move, global markets halted trading, not because they were collapsing, but because they were being paused, stabilized. A momentary stillness. Brokers and billionaires screamed into screens that no longer listened. But the people had already made up their minds. Governments, some reluctant, some inspired, began issuing sweeping emergency policies. Political donations were capped by law. Lobbying firms were dismantled. Corporate influence over national elections was declared a direct threat to democracy. No longer were the rich writing the rules. Forensic accountants, thousands strong, were turned loose with real power, full transparency, and global jurisdiction. Hidden assets were unmasked. Offshore accounts, long thought untouchable, were made public. Shell companies collapsed under audit. Private jets were grounded as their ownership trails vanished into criminal court cases. Assets obtained through corruption or exploitation were seized, not stolen but reclaimed, by the people who had paid the cost. Those assets were redirected into reconstruction, healthcare, education, and sustainability programs that had once been laughed out of committee rooms. Even organized crime could not hide. Entire empires, decades in the making, were stripped to the bone in full public view. Mafia holdings, cartel accounts, human trafficking revenue, all folded into the same global reclamation effort. Corrupt political figures were removed or imprisoned with open trials, live broadcasts, and full public documentation. No more secrets, no backdoor deals, no more buried scandals. And the world didn't burn, it exhaled. Yes, corporations fell. Old giants once thought too big to fail collapsed under the weight of exposure. But the world did not go dark. From their ashes, smaller companies emerged, nimble, transparent, ethical, and often cooperative in structure. Freed from monopolistic chokeholds, these businesses began to thrive. And as their success grew, something unimaginable began to happen. Prices began to fall. Not artificially, not by decree, but naturally. Because middlemen were gone, kickbacks were gone, and bloated profiteering had evaporated. Food became affordable, medicine accessible, homes buildable. In a move no one saw coming, the United Nations was reborn. No longer a symbolic body, no longer toothless, it was given a binding charter, not to manage conflict, but to correct it. A global mediator, backed by international cooperation and enforced transparency. Even in China, the last stronghold of centralized communist control, the truth could not be contained. The government tried to suppress it, but the people had seen too much. They didn't storm the palace, they walked away from it. City by city, province by province, the will of the people outpaced the propaganda. The old order collapsed under its own weight, and in its place rose something new. Citizen coalitions guided by transparency, science, and the hunger for dignity. Around the world, leaders who clung to the past became fossils in real time. The media no longer answered to ad revenue. Education was no longer for sale. Artificial intelligence and automation, once designed to extract labor value, were redirected to lighten human burdens. And everywhere, at every summit, in every council, through every street protest, turned policy, one message, guided the change. This future will be designed for people, not profit. Not everyone approved. The rich raged behind gated estates. Lobbyists cursed the day the World Council had been formed. They had thought it would be just one more committee they could control. They had been wrong. And now their time was over. It didn't happen overnight. But the shift had begun. After centuries of abuse, distraction, and delay, Earth's pulse had steadied. Not from silence or suppression, but from alignment. For the first time since the age of myths, human intention and planetary rhythm were moving in harmony. The World Council was granted full global mandate, not through conquest, but consent. Its authority was no longer theoretical. Nations, newly humbled and still reeling from the truth, voted unanimously to give the Council's stewardship over the implementation of ancient and rediscovered technologies. They would not govern by force but by science, transparency, and moral clarity. At the heart of this effort stood one man, Jason Jones. No longer just a rogue engineer with dismissed theories and an outlier's reputation, Jason was appointed chief architect of planetary infrastructure. His task: to realign and reactivate the global energy grid, built not by modern hands, but by civilizations lost beneath ice and time. Working with a coalition of scientists, indigenous knowledge keepers, and AI systems trained on ancient scripts, Jason coordinated teams across 6 continents. From the high Andes to the Siberian Plateau, they excavated long-buried relay points, reconstructed resonance towers, and replaced the quartz transmission caps that had once connected Earth's electromagnetic heartbeat to the power needs of its people. 3 generators were successfully brought online: the Great Pyramid in Egypt, the underground array in Antarctica, and a newly unearthed site in the jungles of Guatemala, once a node in the long-forgotten network of the Olmec. Jason's crowning achievement was a 4th generator, newly built, not by aliens, not by Atlanteans, but by us. Using recovered schematics, materials synthesized from ancient designs, and a workforce composed of every major nation, a new capstone array was constructed in what had once been the Sahara Desert, now greening again thanks to subtle climate stabilization from the newly balanced grid. Power surged across continents without wires or turbines. No more coal, no more combustion. Cities lit up from atmospheric resonance, not extraction. As energy poured freely, a second wave of transformation began. Massive global cleanup and reclamation efforts replaced fossil fuel production and mining. Old oil fields were capped and converted into microbial biorefineries. Ocean trawlers were stripped of nets and retrofitted to collect plastic from the gyres. Mountains, once ripped open for metal, became forested again. Automated swarms of cleanup drones scoured industrial ruins, breaking down synthetic toxins into reusable elements. Refineries became recycling centers. Smoke became mist. The sky turned blue again. With energy abundant and automation now ethically deployed, labor was redirected, not to profit, but to restoration. Former oil rig workers planted coral farms. Auto factory engineers redesigned water filtration systems. Children, once destined for debt and labor, returned to classrooms. And all the while, above them, the sky kept clearing. Satellites tracked the shrinking of the ozone scar. UV levels dropped. Migratory patterns of birds and sea life stabilized. The great reefs, long thought dead, began to breathe again under waves that once choked with silt and oil. Fields, long cracked by drought, softened. Rain returned, not in violent floods, but in rhythmic seasonal pulses. Regions once labeled uninhabitable began to bloom. The air grew lighter, the heat less cruel. And across thousands of villages and cities, for the first time in living memory, no one worried whether the lights would stay on. The earth, long wounded and aching, was beginning to heal. Not by miracle, by choice. The hum of the old world was gone. No more factory belches blackening the sky. No more cables buzzing with desperate energy. No more smog-choked cities masking survival as progress. In their place came stillness and growth. It began with education. Once a privilege guarded by wealth, education was declared a universal right. Abundant energy meant abundant bandwidth. Knowledge became untethered from geography and wealth. Remote villages in Nepal streamed quantum biology lectures. Children in refugee camps studied planetary ecology through augmented reality. Teachers, once silenced by political regimes, now taught openly from broadcast hubs, monitored only for accuracy and ethics. Languages long dead were revived. Histories long buried were told by those who lived them. Science and wisdom, once forced to compete, finally learned to speak the same language. In the vacuum once filled by profit, people began rediscovering purpose. Former investment bankers became soil engineers. Retired machinists taught fabrication to rural inventors. Youth, once trained to market lies, became architects of sustainable cities. Greed shrank, not by law, but by irrelevance. What once brought prestige, ownership, accumulation, domination, was now seen as obsolete. In its place rose something quieter: service, craft, curiosity. The oceans, no longer poisoned by runoff and plastic, teemed again with life. Fish returned in numbers that stunned even the eldest fishermen. Coral cities re-emerged from bleached skeletons. Dolphins followed drone-cleaning ships in play. Whales sang louder. The skies followed. Jet trails thinned, then vanished. Carbon vanished from the data reports. Smog became memory. Children in Beijing saw stars. Rain in Mumbai no longer carried ash. The earth inhaled deep, long, and clean. Deserts became gardens. Using resonance field manipulation and water condensation towers powered by the planetary grid, once failed farms bloomed. In northern Africa, fields of millet waved again in the wind. In the American Midwest, depleted soil was regenerated with fungal infusions and microbial networks modeled after prehistoric templates. India, Australia, Mongolia, all reclaimed fertility once thought lost forever. And from those fields came food, not rationed, not sold at luxury, grown in abundance, delivered without demand, stored with purpose, not profit. For the first time since the first plow broke the earth, no human being on the planet went to sleep hungry. It didn't happen in one day. It didn't happen in one generation. A single global breath, a pause, a reckoning, a decision to pivot from ruin toward renewal had saved not only what humanity was, but what it could still become. The World Council remained, not as rulers, but as stewards, guardians of transparency, keepers of access, not worshipped, not feared, just trusted. Jason Jones, now grayer around the temples and quieter in speech, walked alone through a new relay site nestled in a Swiss meadow. Children were playing nearby, the field hummed gently under his feet. Melissa had returned to teaching. Lang was helping design a planetary mythology curriculum rooted not in obedience, but in wonder. Dr. Parker was translating new glyphs found near the ruins of a fifth generator, one even older than the others, now reawakened. None of them were rich, none of them wanted to be. And overhead, satellites once built for war now tracked healing, of soil, of air, of mind. The Earth, no longer dying, was now becoming, and for the first time in written history, there was no one left behind.